The Gentle Giant's Redemption Trail. Standing an imposing 7'4" and tipping the scales at nearly 300 pounds, Zach Edey was an immovable object on the basketball court. The Canadian-born center had been a force of nature during his collegiate career at Purdue, dominating in the paint and bullying opponents with his rare combination of size, skill, and surprising mobility for such a massive frame. As he prepared for the 2023 NBA draft following his junior season, Edey was projected as a potential lottery pick, a tantalizing prospect who could immediately upgrade any franchise's interior defense and low-post scoring punch. With basketball lifespans being drastically extended by modern sports science, Edey's sheer enormity hinted at a decade or more of sustained impact awaiting whichever team scooped him up. When draft night finally arrived on June 22, Edey's name was called with the 14th overall selection by the Indiana Pacers. He had accomplished his lifelong dream of being plucked from obscurity to become an NBA multimillionaire at just 21 years old. To the casual observer, Zach Edey was solidifying himself for basketball immortality as a future cornerstone superstar poised to wreak havoc in the league for years to come. In reality, his first year of professional basketball would take the Gentle Giant on an emotionally turbulent roller coaster of mental health battles, rehabilitation from injury, and soul-searching that nearly broke his spirit entirely before setting him on an unexpected path towards true self-actualization. Big Zach's big rookie shocker. From the moment he arrived for his inaugural NBA training camp, Edey faced constant scrutiny and skepticism about whether his game could properly translate against the league's supreme athletes. Despite putting up stellar numbers at Purdue against top-tier NCAA competition, scouts and coaches constantly harped on his lack of quickness defensively as well as a perceived inability to step out and operate in space as a modern five-man. The Indiana coaching staff and culture immediately put the big man in a demanding environment where he was constantly pitted in hostile practice competitions against the likes of bruising veteran Miles Turner and athletic phenom Isaiah Jackson with the mandate to prove himself daily. He seemed overwhelmed out of the gate, adjusting to the pace and physicality, sparking doubts about investing so loftily in the fitness-challenged 20-year-old who had always relied on outmuscling opponents. Things quickly came to a head for Edey when he contracted a viral illness during preseason that caused him to bloat up to near 325 pounds. This bout with arrhythmic fever saw him lose nearly 20 pounds overnight due to rapid weight loss, leaving his body weakened and unable to properly recover in time for opening night. Just like that, the prized lottery pick was benched for a decent chunk of the first half of the 2023-24 season as the coaching staff forced him to get into proper game shape through harsh conditioning practices. To make matters even more psychologically damaging, Indiana's front office had tripled down on their big man investment by signing veteran 7-footer DeAndre Jordan in the offseason to tutor Edey. So while the rookie was figuratively and literally being pounded into the ground every day in obscurity, the lights and spotlights followed Jordan starting and playing big minutes. It seemed like every Indiana home game meant listening to the bellowing announcer constantly reminding fans in attendance, and DeAndre Jordan back in the game to patrol that paint for the Pacers. This huge addition was brought in to mentor young Zach Edey and solidify their interior defense for years to come. While minor in hindsight, Edey characterized those early indignities when looking back years later as deeply humiliating blows to his confidence and sense of self-worth that chipped away at his psyche. A young man who had grown up hearing endless taunts of being too big and an ogre endured a baptism by psychological fire from the moment he hit the biggest stage of his lifelong dreams. Mental rupture and bottom. By the time the calendar rolled into the new year of 2024, the basketball joy and enthusiasm had been utterly drained for Zach Edey. Caught in a perpetual spiral of struggling with the NBA's heliacal pace, he faced endless conditioning regimens, deprivations of seeing any playing time, and persistent whispers of being a bust pick by the organization and media. Fellow rookies leapfrogged ahead of him in the rotation as he remained stapled to the bench for all of Indiana's games. It was a bitter pill that only compounded the mental taxation and increasing self-esteem crisis for the formerly supreme talent, often labeled as too big to fail during his high school and collegiate days. When Indiana visited Boston in mid-January for a nationally televised Milk Day showcase, the bottom collapsed entirely. After appearing completely disinterested and despondent throughout pre-game warm-ups, Edey was left behind in the locker room rather than sitting the bench. Team officials cited a coach's decision to the media, but behind closed doors everyone knew the truth: the young developing giant had reached a critical impasse and mental breaking point requiring immediate intervention. Within days, Edey was on the way back to Indianapolis after being admitted into an emergency inpatient mental health treatment program at a local facility. The team announced the promising rookie would be away indefinitely to focus on overcoming anxiety, depression, and other issues related to transitioning into professional basketball's cutthroat environment. What was supposed to be a celebratory rookie campaign had devolved into a full mental health crisis stemming from out-of-control insecurity over being labeled an underperforming bust. Zach has dealt with some personal issues that crept into the competitive sphere, said team psychologist Dr. Brandon Marshall in a statement. Elite competitors at his size face unique external pressures to perform on top of the normal rookie transition, and our priority is helping him reset his mental framework to attack his development in a sustainable way. While it won't be an overnight process, we have a comprehensive plan to guide Zach back to a positive headspace and eventually rejoin his teammates and coaching staff when ready. Edey himself penned an open letter via social media to his fans and supporters at this mental nadir. "I feel like I've let everyone down, from my family and friends who sacrificed to lift me to the NBA, to my coaches who invested a high draft pick on my potential, and of course to every young person out there who looks up to me as an example of chasing your biggest dreams. The truth is I've always felt like an outcast because of my size and have struggled with deep insecurities about my appearance that impacted my mental health. The harsh scrutiny of not meeting external expectations at the NBA level was just the final breaking point." The letter of vulnerability resonated far beyond basketball circles, laying bare the mental health challenges and turmoil brewing behind the scenes of even the most outwardly accomplished phenoms. In working towards rebuilding his confidence, Edey made the decision to refocus on taking care of his physical frame and channeling the infectious positive spirit that made him a college superstar in the first place. A new personal awakening. It was 2 full months before Edey felt mentally equipped to rejoin the Pacers, with team management assuring him they would be ultra patient in easing him back onto the floor. While the tough love of hostile initial practices that pressured the prospect into cracking was undoubtedly a contributing factor to his breakdown, he no longer harbored any resentments towards the coaches or medical staff. The entire experience served as the wake-up call Edey desperately needed to embrace the totality of his identity rather than compartmentalizing his inner self-acceptance from external expectations of being a dominant NBA player. Through intense therapy and self-exploration work, he'd made profound realizations about his gift of size not being a handicap to overcome but rather a power that made Edey a truly singular life form in his sport. During the 2-month rehab hiatus where he focused intently on yoga, meditation, extra strength training and nutrition fine-tuning to complement his medical treatment, Edey overhauled his entire frame of mind around self-love and what it meant to exist as such a literal and figurative big presence in this world. "Going through intensive treatment taught me just how out of touch I had become with my inner core and confidence in being this gentle 7'4" giant walking around," Edey reflected. "I had let cruel taunts and pressures from others over the years warp my perception into thinking being big and strong was somehow a disease that needed fixing rather than a sacred gift and blessing to be cherished." When the rejuvenated rookie finally took the floor again for Indiana in mid-March, he played with renewed ferocity and sense of peace that belied his size. Here was a human being utterly unafraid of taking up space and owning every ounce of his intimidating presence in the world. Edey spoke proudly of learning to harness the full vibration of his size, personality, and spirit in a way that energized both himself and those around him. Being able to succeed and thrive on the court was now secondary to the deeper metamorphosis of accepting himself unconditionally as a rare individual who refused to shrink for the sake of others' comfort. No longer was Edey going to make mental concessions or cope with self-loathing simply because he stood head and shoulders above the masses in more ways than one. The Pacers' gentle giant was truly born again hardened. Empowerment begets dominance. Over the final throes of the 2023-24 NBA season, as his body and mind achieved equilibrium from his intensive treatment regimen, Zach Edey's potential began to become fully realized for the league to behold. Once he was able to unlock all the physical advantages and skill related to his basketball gifts without any self-imposed mental taxation holding him back, he rapidly became a dominant interior force for the Pacers. Beyond the sheer numbers and production of averaging 14 points and 10 rebounds per game over the final 24 games, it was the steady confidence and poise Edey exuded while causing utter chaos on both ends. Opponents had no answer for how to attack or defend such a towering presence who could both physically overwhelm them while also displaying remarkable touch and coordination in operating around the rim. As Indiana emerged from the play-in tournament to snag the final playoff spot in the Eastern Conference, Edey became the linchpin for the team's inspired postseason run to the Eastern Conference semifinals. After dispatching Brooklyn by literally wearing down their smaller front court through his relentless presence, the Pacers found themselves engaged in an absolute street fight against the Miami Heat and reigning Defensive Player of the Year, Bam Adebayo. It was in this particular second-round series that Edey solidified himself on the national stage as a future force to reckon with for years. Not only did he hold his own while averaging 17 points, 14 rebounds and 3 blocks against the Heat's rough and rugged interior defense, but Edey won Game 4 by himself in epic fashion. With Indiana trailing 2-1 in the series and on the road in Miami for a crucial swing game, Edey delivered a masterpiece in the final minute of regulation and overtime to even the series. First, he completed an unstoppable three-point play to tie the game at 96-96 with just 21 seconds left in the fourth. Then in the closing seconds, he swatted away a potential Miami game-winning shot by Tyler Herro to force overtime. In the extra frame, Edey took over for good. After scoring Indiana's first 6 points of OT to give them the lead, he sealed the victory with a monstrous putback dunk over Bam Adebayo as the shot clock expired to give Indiana a 107-102 lead they wouldn't relinquish. Following the titanic 30-point, 18-rebound performance, the Giants signaled his arrival by standing over Adebayo, glaring down with outstretched arms, channeling every bit of his overwhelming presence. It was an alpha statement announcing to the world a new enforcer had materialized. Indiana fell short of the promised land, bowing out in the Eastern Finals to Boston in 7 grueling games. But Edey exorcised every last remaining self-doubt demon by trading blows with the battle-tested Celtics to the bitter end. Even in defeat, he'd claimed his rightful stake into the future of the NBA with his uncompromising two-way play on the biggest stage, demonstrating all the size, skill, and toughness required to be a championship-level building block. Leveraging his platform for greatness. While Zach Edey's on-court ascendancy was capturing national attention and establishing him as a dominant interior presence for a new generation, the bigger picture storyline was how he embraced his newfound platform to deliver uplifting messages surrounding confidence, mental health, and self-acceptance. Rather than separating his personal journey from his professional basketball career, the refreshingly uncompromising gentle giant gave full voice to the spiritual and emotional components that reshaped his worldview. In particular, Edey became an ambassador pushing to destigmatize mental health care and normalize therapy for athletes and young people dealing with confidence issues stemming from insecurities about their outward appearance or differences. He drew parallels to his own struggles, feeling self-conscious about being too big, along with the caustic taunts over his height and size that persisted from childhood all the way through early basketball fame. Rather than presenting a perfectly curated image for marketing purposes, Edey was brutally transparent about where his competitive drive and passion for the game nearly became derailed by letting those insecurities and external pressures compound into debilitating anxiety and depression before seeking professional help. "My single greatest hope is that young people, whether they're a 7'4" giant like myself, someone with a disability or disfigurement, or just dealing with the universal growing pains of their body and self-image being picked apart in front of their friends, hear my story and the darkness I persevered out of and realize they're not alone," Edey revealed during an appearance on Good Morning America after capturing the NBA's Most Improved Player award. "We give these pep talks about not listening to the haters and staying true to yourself, but that's legitimately so much easier said than done when you're in the depths of questioning your entire self-worth every minute of every single day. It becomes a battle for literal survival until you have the humility and courage to ask for help without shame or stigma." Edey routinely conducted events, motivational speeches, and used his social media platform to offer direct encouragement to struggling youths and families facing similar mental health crises. He stressed the need to attack confidence issues at their source rather than attempting to mask them through achievements or altered physical appearance. In his case, building up more muscle or flattening out his 7'4" physical anomaly into a more normal stature would never serve to align his inner peace the way intensive psychiatric treatment did over time. Beyond even the mental health awareness components, Edey leveraged his platform to discuss more spiritual and metaphysical aspects of his personal enlightenment in learning to cherish his inherently divine existence as a truly unique blessing unto the universe itself rather than a handicap or aberration among the masses. He boldly spoke of achieving renewed energy, passion, and motivation by harnessing and channeling the vibrational resonance of his gigantic physical form during games and everyday life. "On the court, I've cracked the code of not just accepting but fully loving and unleashing the power of my size in a way that impacts everyone around me whether they realize it or not," Edey explained during a podcast interview in 2024. "But it goes beyond the competitive arena. Just by beaming out and existing as this unyielding supermassive presence, almost like under its own gravitational pull, I now draw energy from everything in my orbit. My imposing footsteps charge the ground below me. My shadow transmits its own frequency upon anyone or anything it eclipses. There's this entire plane of vibrational energy that's transferred without words." Edey's particular philosophy about vibrating love and self-acceptance from within led him to routinely visit schools and community organizations to conduct massive group meditation and sound bath healing sessions dedicated to empowering confidence and self-assurance. With thunderous vocal chants alongside instrumentation designed to produce deep somatic reverberations, the sessions were intended to literally have audiences marinate in the full resonance of Zach's presence as collective catharsis for their own internalized negative self-talk and suppressed emotions. In a testament to his rising stature and credibility, Edey earned partnerships with athletic apparel companies and consumer brands to manufacture and distribute motivational multimedia products and tools based on his philosophies of sound healing and vibration alignment in pursuit of unlocking one's highest potential. Everything from audio-embedded activewear to vibrational floor mats and sleep masks brought Edey's teachings into the homes and personal wellness spaces of a rapidly growing fan base, spurring a tectonic cultural shift. While Zach Edey's rapid stardom and ascent on the NBA stage coinciding with his mental health transparency and positivity gospel may have seemed like an overnight phenomenon to those unacquainted with his backstory, the movements and awareness trail blazed by the center ran far deeper than any single persona. In many ways, Edey was the vessel to unite multiple centuries-old philosophies around self-actualization, inner child empowerment, and bridging indigenous spiritual beliefs into the Western mainstream. To the secular world, his ideals around confidence and harnessing one's inherent divinity to fearlessly emit positive vibrations into the cosmos seemed like progressively fringe New Age wokeness seeping into modern celebrity athlete culture. But the